Hold on, the Brits is coming back.
It is coming back. We've announced that already, so that's not an exclusive there.
Is there a Banksy exhibition just opened? Were you behind that, were you?
No, that's not me. Because the idea of saying where should we go for a cultural weekend Manchester was frankly laughable back in the 80s.
Kids growing up in the city now can see those household names. They can have global careers out of Manchester.
Good afternoon. Welcome to our latest podcast, Trading Places. I'm delighted to be joined by an eclectic mix today. The title is Global Manchester. So the last couple of weeks, personally, we've had the Brits, which was amazing, and I just think that Manchester is doing really, really well at branding ourselves and doing business in the city in a world which is facing far more challenges. So I want to really dig into why Manchester is now global and what we've done really well as a city. But if we can just pop round and introduce ourselves.
So I'm Victoria Braddock, I'm the MD at Marketing Manchester, and it's my great pleasure to promote Manchester nationally and internationally all over the world. So I spend all of my time running around the world telling people how brilliant Greater Manchester is.
I'm Thom Hetherington. I suppose my two fields are hospitality and culture. I founded Restaurant Magazine and the 50 Best Restaurants in the World, and I also owned and ran NRB, the biggest annual hospitality event in the UK, right here in Manchester for 19 years. And I also own and run Manchester Art Fair, Contemporary Art Fair, and I now work as a consultant, speaker, writer in those two fields.
Joe Manning, Managing Director at Invest Manchester, and alongside Victoria at Marketing Manchester, our job is to sell the city internationally and attract inward investment to Greater Manchester.
I'm Becci Thomson. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer at Co-op Live. I was the third employee on the project, and I've been working there for nearly 5 years now. So I've seen the site pretty much from a hole in the ground all the way up to what it is today, where we're nearly 2 years old and hosting amazing events like the Brit Awards.
And Becci, we must start with you. So hot off the Brits. What do you think that meant for the city? I mean, how big a deal is it getting the Brits to come to Manchester away from London for the first time ever?
I mean, it's a huge deal. I used to work at the O2, so I've been part of the Brit Awards for many years. I think events can get quite lost in London. It's such a big place and the city doesn't really get behind it like we've seen with the Brits. I mean, it was a huge collaboration between the BPI, us at Co-op Live, the venue, also Manchester City Council, Manchester Marketing Manchester, and ABID to bring that event to the city. And we've seen that it was the most impactful Brits to date. We've just had the viewing figures in and all of the reach. It was 500 million in reach. The ITV viewing figures were 6.3 million. And I think the most impactful stat was that it was over 1 million views internationally. So really putting Manchester on that global stage. But you only had to walk down the street to see the Brits branding, the city getting behind it, from the trams to the traffic lights, the renaming of Olivia Deansgate Station, which was definitely iconic. And actually, the inhibitions were down. There was no, pretentiousness. Everybody was just really excited to come to the event, which I think is that secret sauce that Manchester offers.
How did we as a city do that transaction in terms of attract them to come to Manchester?
We've got a pipeline that at the moment goes up to 2040 of events that we want to bid for and attract here. With the Brits, it was all about collaborating with them. As Becky said, I think we've reinvigorated the event for them. And I think that's the difference when you get a whole city approach to it. The city wrapped its arms around that event and everybody got behind it. But that would have started with the bid that, would have been worked on about 5 years ago. It takes a long time to land these events, but then you take it through past the event, build the legacy so that we've got a longer term legacy for having these events. At the event, it was full of young people. The pit was all young people that want to get into the music industry. So when we start the bid, it's how can we bring economic benefit to Manchester, but also how can we leave a long-term legacy? We get the profile, we get everything else, but we also want to have that long-term legacy.
We're getting the next Olympics then.
Well, Olympics are being talked about at the moment. Where are we going to host the Olympics? I don't think it'll just be a Manchester solo bid, but there's lots in the pipeline. I mean, the stuff that was announced yesterday with the Ryder Cup bid yesterday was announced. We're talking about the Women's FIFA World Cup. So we've got a constant drumbeat. We know the impact that events make, not only on the economic value that it brings here, but the statistics of, the eyes that are on us, their eyes across the globe, whether it's Chanel, whether it's the Brits, whether it's, we've got the Euros coming. This is a constant drumbeat putting out the correct messages.
The Chanel, was that a similar story to the Brits? How were we attracted?
It wasn't a bidding process. Chanel actually approached Manchester, which is something that we'll probably dine out on for the rest of our lives. That was an approach from Chanel directly into the city council.
And what did they do exactly?
They take their fashion show around the world to places that are seen as being cutting edge and groundbreaking. So they approached the city council and said, we want to do a fashion show in the middle of, and the city made it work. So the amazing events team that they've got there decided that, Tib Street was the best place to do it, and you had catwalk models walking through the Northern Quarter, but only because of the way that the council worked could you land something like that. Chanel have invested millions into that, but the benefit that we've got is then we've got other people competing to want to bring their events. So we have some that we bid for, we have some that we're approached from, we have some that we say no thank you to. So it's a process of making sure that we've got the right ones that are going to profile us, and make sure that they're what we're about as a city, that it works with our DNA, it works with our culture. It's going to leave an impact for the city. So yeah, Chanel knocked on our door.
Well, would anyone be knocking on the door, Thom, if we didn't have the quality of restaurants, bars, hotels? This all must sort of form part of our offering.
I think there's kind of two sides to it, isn't there? There's a functional side whereby if you're going to have huge events come into the city, you need the bed stock. You physically need to be able to accommodate that many people. So one side of it's quite kind of empirical and functional, but the other side of it is more aspirational. You want the team delivering the event to think, I'd like to spend a weekend in Manchester. What a great city. What a place that would be to go to. And also they want to feel for the visitors, the guests that they're bringing, that there's a kind of wraparound offer that yes, they're coming for the event, but if people are coming for an overnight or they're traveling some distance, that they are going to enjoy being in that city as well. So there's a real symbiosis with the hospitality industry and the events industry. And I think we're very lucky in Manchester. I think Manchester's quite unique in that there's probably 5 or 6 key audiences that you need to make a hospitality ecology thrive. You need city centre residents, you need a wider catchment of residents. The student market is a big one, the visitor economy, particularly event-driven visitor economy, and the kind of corporate audience as well. And if you look at somewhere like Liverpool, it does really well when the events are in town, but midweek it can struggle because it hasn't got that corporate market. Whereas Leeds has a corporate market, but it doesn't have that big wash of numbers coming in for events in the way that Liverpool or Manchester might. So Manchester does kind of tick all of those boxes. And it supports what is undoubtedly the kind of widest, deepest, best quality, most varied and most complete hospitality ecosystem outside of London. And I think it's a huge part of our offer. You talk to any restaurateur, they all want to know what the football fixtures are. They all want to know what's on at the arena. They all want to know what big events are going to come to the city. And it's amazing the difference that it can make. I remember one particular anecdote from the guys at Higher Ground, which is one of the best restaurants in the city, quite kind of high-end, modern British kind of produce-led.
Chris O told you to say that.
He hasn't, I swear, no money changed hands, no brown envelopes. But it's a great restaurant run by 3 guys with multi-Michelin star pedigree on multiple continents. But they said the best day of trading that they've ever had is when the Eagles were on at Co-op Live, because it was the Eagles' only concert in Europe, and obviously a slightly older crowd, so probably a slightly more moneyed crowd. And they had people flying in from Spain, from Germany, from Scandinavia, and they just looked for one of the best restaurants in the city, and they went there for dinner. And the spend was absolutely off the chart. So you'd think when you have a big event, a big concert, then the guys selling burgers or the guys in the Northern Quarter where you can have a drink at 1 a.m. are going to be the guys benefiting, but it goes right the way up the pyramid.
So we've got an amazing array of independent operators, but we do seem to be ticking up in terms of the number of big brands from outside of Manchester, whether it's international or from down south. Why are these new big brands selecting Manchester over and above other regional cities?
You've hit on something which is a kind of really current topic in the sector. People ask me about why that's happening, why we've got Chotomate, why we've got Big Mama Group, why we've got Soho House, why we've got Sexy Fish, etc., etc. It's not that complicated. It comes down to audience. The restaurants are where the audience is and where the footfall is. And I think what Manchester has done, and this leads into that kind of same old story, is over a period of decades, they've worked really, really, really hard at building up layered audiences in the city, whether that's businesses relocating here and bringing their employees, whether it's residents in the city centre, whether it's people coming for events or whatever. I feel there should be a kind of fluffier or more romantic answer, but it comes down to the numbers. It's the audiences. They see the audiences here, and they believe that they can trade at the levels that they want and they have in other global cities. I think Soho House is a really interesting example of this.
Are you a fan?
I think it's brilliant, and I thought from day one that it would work, and I had numerous debates with people who just said it won't work. Manchester doesn't do members clubs, we don't need it here, all the normal rubbish and all the rest of it. And I think the brilliance of Soho House is that I used to be a member of Circle Club back in the day. We all remember these kind of attempts at private members clubs in Manchester, and they don't work because Manchester was quite small back then, and the people who you need to be their membership could almost sit back and say, look, there's only so many people in Manchester who might be a member of your club. You need me. I don't need you. You need me. And I think that's why a lot of these clubs failed. Whereas what Soho House has done, they've looked at two things. If I open in Manchester, is there an audience of kind of well-paid, affluent, creative people who would like to be members of Soho House? Yes. Equally importantly, if we open in Manchester, will our global network of members like coming to Manchester and have reason to come to Manchester and make use of the house? And it's that dovetailing of ground up and top down, which is what makes it work.
And it seems to have gone down really well.
I was in there for dinner last night and it was packed. The entire floor, every table was taken in the restaurant on a Wednesday.
I was there yesterday around the pool and it was heaving.
You did incredibly well to get by the pool. Good work there.
I was just going to say on that international, 1 in 10 of our fans are international. On an average show, but actually when we have arena exclusive, so it's funny you say Eagles, that was an arena exclusive, so we saw a much higher audience come internationally. We saw the same with Bruce Springsteen, with Harry Styles last week. They were one-off, so it really attracts that global audience. But I think it's about infrastructure, it's about timing, and I think it's about everything is aligning at this time to make everything sort of falling into place.
And Joe, what helps the office market is inward investment, and that's new entrants, so new businesses coming to Manchester. What are the reasons why Manchester is so successful for new business?
Yeah, I mean, Manchester, it's sparing the data. It's been the top performing regional city for inward investment in the UK for nearly a decade now. It's a key factor driving the growth story that we all shout about, where we've got a city region that's been growing faster than the UK average for 10 years. A lot of that is driven by new investment coming from elsewhere in the UK and importantly internationally. I think a key thing for the economy is how diverse the city is. So we're not placing a bet on a particular sector. So we do have the large corporate office market underpinned by financial, professional and business services, and that's been kind of the engine room of the city's growth for a long time. But we're also differentiating beyond that. So life science is growing out of the Oxford Road corridor, an amazing tech economy and increasingly AI-ready economy as well. What's going on around creative industries anchored in Media City, but what's happening around St. John's and Soho House, that's around the creative economy that's growing up and content generation and staying ahead of the curve on that. And then fundamentally across the city region, we still have strengths in manufacturing and some more traditional industries as well. So Manchester's not put a bet on one sector, and we have multiple sector strengths. And I think that is very attractive for investors who might be working across multiple sectors. The other thing that's a key differentiator is talent. In the same way that the restaurateurs or the events want to be where the audience is, businesses want to be where the talent is, and the city region is both a talent engine through the universities and increasingly a talent attractor. So we have highest graduate retention rate of any city in the UK.
Is it really over 50% now?
I think it's about 56% out of the University of Manchester, and we now have a higher net inbound of people coming to the city from London and people leaving the city to go to London, which is quite a striking difference of where we would have been even 5 years ago.
That has to be to jobs or even vacancies, i.e. when I first started here, most of the jobs were in pretty traditional professional services. You could be a lawyer, you could be a surveyor, you could be an accountant. But now the businesses which are growing and investing here, means you can have a job across all sorts of sectors.
What you get is like it's depth of labour market in the kind of jargon, right? Which is like, it's not just your job, it's the job after that. And if other companies come in, they are saying, well, we can recruit across. So everyone wants a software engineer or a data scientist. Everyone wants someone who can help in the kind of the building out of their software within the company. So that is the richness we're seeing in the city. People want a great place to live. They want a good job, but they want a great place to live. So the culture, the restaurants, the vibrancy of the city is really, really important to keeping the corporate investment and the talent attraction as well.
And Becci, Co-op Live, have you got a very close relationship with the football club in terms of wider regeneration? It really is becoming a place, the Etihad campus.
Yeah, so Co-op Live is a joint venture between Oakview Group and City Football Group. It's a 50-50 joint venture. And then we have 3 private investors. So Harry Styles is one, Simon Moran is the other, and Dennis Desmond from Live Nation is the other.
That in itself is great, isn't it? Yeah. It shows, again, multiple parties working together and coming together to create something. Via
Polestar last year, it was the top grossing venue from a ticket sales perspective. So yeah, we're really proud of that. But I think in terms of the development with CFG, it's a really exciting time because we've got the Medlock Hotel opening on campus back end of the summer, 401 bedrooms. So it'll be one of the largest hotels outside of London. So that, again, like when we're talking about from a collaboration perspective and what we can go out and pitch for, to have hotel on site opens us up to new events, both B2B and B2C. They also put in planning permission for Mamma Mia the Party.
I saw that the other day. I was with the architect, Alistair, who's designing it. It looks unbelievable.
Yeah, they have one in the O2 in London. It must have been there now for, I don't know, so at least 7 or 8 years. It's booked out every single night. Sometimes they do a matinee as well. Like we've spoken about, it is an international as well. So yeah, there's plans for that to open, within the next 12 months, and then the whole entertainment district within Man City. So that place, it's already becoming a destination in its own right, but it will just highlight that even more so. So
changes the game.
Changes the game.
Entertainment district. You've got everything on one
place. Yeah.
The parties that will happen pre and post Co-op Live as well. I think you're just keeping everybody on that site, and 20-minute walk from the city centre as well.
When you're marketing the city, what are your top 5 selling points?
Depends on which audience. The biggest pitch is always the culture and the people, because it's what makes us different. Cities are made of the people. The people and the culture are the strongest things. Our assets can't go anywhere in the world without somebody asking you about football. So we will always come back to a conversation about sport. I would say sport, culture, the access to opportunity is something that we talk about. So being able to relocate here and have a good career here, something that we talk about. Major events for us are huge. So when we're pitching those, it's how do we make your business event more fun? That then comes full circle back to culture. Access to other places within the UK is huge for us as well. So if we're doing promotional work in China, India, the US, we're talking about Manchester as the gateway to the UK. I'm talking about the fact that we've got 5 national parks on the doorstep that, we might be doing a cross promotion. Manchester's your gateway to Wales. So it depends on which market we're talking to, but culture is at the heart of everything that we talk about. Culture and sport's huge. That's what international audiences know us for.
And that links to the airport. What do you think the importance of Manchester Airport is, Joe?
We talked about it, airport bringing people in for the visitor economy, for the nights at the Co-op Live, watching the Eagles, right? So it's brilliant, but I think actually realising its asset for business is huge. So 200 destinations at the moment, but the chance for further international connectivity, both short haul and long haul. You don't need to just come and run Northwest operations out of Manchester. Come and run your European and Middle East activity out of Manchester. And that allows us to pitch that into Asian markets or North American markets. And we're seeing people do that. And importantly, it also allows people to do much more client-focused work out of the city as well. You don't need to host your client work for European clients out of London. You can host that out of Manchester. And I think the airport's potential further growth with Northern Powerhouse Rail, bringing in a wider catchment area and increasing its connectivity through Piccadilly, can only strengthen our hand in terms of that sales pitch. So for us, market connectivity, international connectivity is crucial in the sale.
And Tom, what is the outlook? What's the exciting word on the street in terms of the hospitality sector at the moment?
I don't want to bring the mood down, but obviously with the interventions by the government recently, I think everyone's feeling quite nervous. The changes to rates that are coming in April, and obviously the increase in national insurance as well. So if you took the general mood music of the hospitality industry, not just in Manchester but across the UK, people are scared and they are concerned at the minute, and there's talk of it being a potential kind of existential issue for the sector. What I would say within Manchester, without making light of any of the operators who are out there who are struggling, is that generally the good people, the good operators, they're trading really well. Their margins might not be there because their costs have gone through the roof, but they're busy. And I think they recognise that Manchester as a city has been really good at generating that footfall, whether it is residential or tourism, visitor economy, whatever it might be.
Have you seen that the increase? I mean, there's way over 100,000 people now living in the city centre. Is that had a big impact?
Enormous.
Yeah.
Enormous. I mean, no one moves to the city centre because they don't have disposable income or because they don't like eating out. They live in the city centre because they enjoy those things. So if for the sake of argument that you said that breakfast, lunch, dinner, drinks, maybe they go out to a restaurant, a bar, or a cafe 5 times a week. That's 500,000 meal occasions a week that just didn't exist 20, 25 years ago. And you'll know this, Will, but you talk to developers around the city centre, they think this extended city centre population can top out at about 250, something like that. So you could be talking 1 million to 1.5 million meal occasions easily. And I've just kind of plucked that figure of 5. I go out more than 5 times a week, and I'm sure a lot of city centre dwellers do.
I don't know how you stay so thin.
The hills of Gloucester, one of those nearby national parks, which Victoria was
It's all in my promotional deck.
Absolutely. So yeah, it's that city centre audience has been huge, and I think it helped a lot through COVID. You noticed it if you went to other cities as we were able to start coming back out, but people still had to stay in their local area. A lot of city centres around the UK felt a bit post-apocalyptic, but you kind of went around Manchester and you could feel it coming back to normal already because there was that density of people right here in the heart of the city.
And I think the way that the city centre is being curated a bit more now with some of the planning that's underway. We were at the launch yesterday of the Mayor's Good Growth Fund. And I think the way that the development now is spreading out from the city centre will have all of those residents that are right smack bang in the heart of the centre. But if you look at what's happening around the Etihad campus and Co-op Live, and then what's happening pushing the boundaries into Salford, I think we'll get to a point in the next 10 years where you draw a circle around our 2 football clubs and that will be the city centre. And I think everything that we can see in the 10-year pipeline is only going to strengthen our position, because those are things that there's a £2 billion pipeline being announced just today. By the time all of those developments have been infilled.
I thought it was really clever yesterday, the Good Growth Fund, where we spend most of our time in the city centre, but the fact Andy was on stage talking about Bolton and Salford and Stockport, everything is being looked at and how to be improved and enhanced from an economic growth and jobs perspective. So I think the city's doing it really, really well with GMCA at the moment and the other borough councils.
And we've seen some of it in Stockport, right? We've seen how Stockport has kind of both invested in its own identity in its town centre and really kind of invested in its own cultural and kind of food offer, but also has created a kind of living offer where people can live in Stockport and work in central Manchester. And that should work for the other towns as well. And the Good Growth Fund's getting behind that. So the fact that Noma and Victoria North is developing as a commercial district should also be beneficial to Rochdale, because if you live in Rochdale, you can now be 20 minutes to working at somewhere like BNY and doing cutting edge global work. And it's creating those opportunities, thinking about it spatially, but also thinking about how the residents of the city region can benefit from it too.
And just on the arts and culture, how important is that offering for Manchester? The King was here this week, wasn't he?
He was here. He was down, I think, at Factory International.
Yeah, Aviva Studios.
Yeah, Aviva Studios. He was indeed.
Did you meet him?
No, I couldn't fit him into my diary. Sadly, I had a long lunch that I just couldn't shake off.
It was on course number 5.
Yeah, maybe next time. Yeah, I think culture is hugely important, but culture's a really interesting one because it is one of those things that can draw people in. I'm sure we all go on city breaks around Europe, and kind of the first thing you do is you look at the restaurants, you look at the galleries or museums, the things that you can do while you're there. It's a really big part of that visitor economy narrative. But at a more fundamental level, it's really, really important for the residents as well, for everyone from school kids all the way up to pensioners to have access to art, to have access to culture. There's all sorts of research about the impact it has on kind of outcomes and creativity and mental health and wellness and all the rest of it. So the fact that we have a really kind of rich set of galleries, institutions in the city centre and across the wider city region is fantastic. And I think we've been through this kind of rolling phase of development, going right back to when the art gallery was expanded, and then the Whitworth was expanded, and then obviously Home was built, and then Factory International. It just feels like it's been one thing and then another thing and then another thing, and the city is unrecognisable really as a cultural destination. I know Sir Howard always, when he went kind of big on the idea of culture, people did laugh, because the idea of saying, where should we go for a cultural weekend, Manchester, was frankly laughable back in the 80s. But now people do. Factory International pulls people in from all over the world, and rightfully so for its programme. It's absolutely world class.
I was in Manchester one Saturday afternoon, and it was like being in a European stag do desk. I could not believe how busy everywhere was during the day.
It was like that after the Brits at 2:00 in the morning on Deansgate.
Were you there?
I couldn't possibly comment.
So just on staying on the culture, music and Manchester, it always goes hand in hand. And when you do launch and operate such a successful venue as what you're doing at the moment, it just feels right.
Like you say, it's such a pedigree here of music, and it's not just guys on guitars. Like the music that's coming out of Manchester now is so diverse. A week today we've got the MOBO Awards, which is the 30th anniversary, so amazing celebration coming to Manchester. I mean, the other thing that we've done to keep that regeneration of grassroots artists is in May last year we launched the Adidas and Abbey Road recording studio. So it's the first time Abbey Road have come out of London with our partner Adidas. They built and designed a world-class recording studio within Co-op Live, which kind of has two strands to it. One of which is to, when artists are in town, if they're in the mood to, especially if they're doing a residency with us, come in, record, use the space, work with an Abbey Road engineer. But the other strand to it is community. So how do we champion grassroots artists and give them access to a studio like that with somebody that can work with them to write, record, and eventually come back through the stage at Co-op Live? That's our big goal.
So what's coming next at Co-op?
So I mentioned the MOBOs, which is a week today. In June, we've got the Netball Super League Grand Final, which is our first major sporting event final. And then in January, we've got the NBA basketball. In February, we've got the Brits again. So we're not stopping. We want to continue.
Hold on, the Brits is coming back.
It is coming back.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, we've announced that already, so it's not an exclusive there.
Will's just trying to get a table for next year. That's what's going on.
But yeah, we want to sort of continue to get those big sporting events in, different and wider diverse content from Latin to K-pop to country music. I mean, we've seen the Country to Country Music Festival coming to the AO, which is amazing for the city. So just more of that, really.
Fantastic. Tom,
Yes.
what do you think we're missing as a city, if anything?
There's probably a couple of things I'd love to see, one in food and one in culture. Again, going back to the idea of city breaks, when we go abroad, when we go to Lisbon or Malaga or wherever it might be, we all go to the big food market, right? You go to the Bucaria in Barcelona. I'd love to see a really big proper market in Manchester. And I think it's interesting what Mike is doing down at Campfield, working with Bailey and the guys at Grub. They're starting to kind of build that bit by bit, and it's starting to happen. But I think that's a great thing for any city, to be able to go and kind of poke around the market and stand there and have a glass of wine, try some of the local produce or whatever. But I'd love it if we could maybe retro engineer back into the city's expansion. And then the other thing which I notice when I travel is we don't have the equivalent of a Tate. We don't have a big public institution dedicated to contemporary art. And I think Manchester should have. We've got fantastic galleries with these unbelievable historic collections.
I believe Banksy. Is there a Banksy exhibition just open?
There is, yes, and Banksy.
Were you behind that, were you?
No, that's not me. That's not me. No, I do many other things, but not that one, Will. But I would like a big contemporary art gallery.
Yeah, I agree that we do need that.
I think that'd be a great thing to have.
I like it. And Joe, can you tell us why some of these big businesses select Manchester as a location?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at a couple of the big players in the city from the last year, so BNY have now been in the city for 20 years. And it's a great growth story, I think.
That's the Bank of New York.
Bank of New York, exactly. And I think, again, going back to the Manchester story, when they first came in 20 years ago, that was seen as a quite signal to the city at that point in time. But you watch their growth story, they've gone from, I think, about 50 employees initially to well over 2,000 now. Almost, the key anchor in the new district building out around Noma. And that really puts us on the map because that's one of 6 growth locations they have globally. And what you then start to see building around that is other household names in financial services. So S&P Global, who've come in and really consolidated and grown in the city, Fitch, another ratings agency, JP Morgan, private bank, people like Vanguard, who are huge and household names. So if we turn up in New York saying, why don't you come to Manchester? That is part of our attraction. They become almost our best salespeople because they talk up the city on our behalf as well. Again, I think if you look at others like an Auto Trade, I think now 10 years in Manchester in terms of their kind of HQ here, you start to build a tech cluster out around some of those big anchors. So the fact that we've got Arm in Manchester with, I think, about 300 software engineers and looking to grow further. And other names like Roku, who are a US company in the streaming services, it just starts to build those kind of industry clusters around those kind of those sector champions. And honestly, like, they do become our best salespeople. They're the people pitching to HQ saying, this is why Manchester's great. They're the people who we can go into market with and help tell the story of the city because, fundamentally we're here to sell Manchester. If they're selling on our behalf, it's much more resonant. Kids growing up in the city now can see those household names and they may want to set up their own companies. They may want to be entrepreneurs, but if they want to go into those companies, they can have global careers out of Manchester. And that is a sea change from where the city was 20 years ago. And I think that's why we do it. And that for me is really exciting. And it's great when those companies buy into the DNA of what Manchester's about and want to give back and want to open up those pathways as well.
Yeah, and these new businesses create new jobs. There's more activity in the cultural places, in the bars, and the restaurants. And from my perspective, when I'm speaking to investors, it's equally very comforting for them to know that businesses want to open up new space in the city as opposed to, as I say, just existing businesses moving around.
And we're in a sweet spot for that as well, where you look at some of these global companies and they're looking at where they should be located internationally. And they might be saying, we don't need to be in the global capitals. Where else can we be in the world? And Manchester's in those conversations now, and it's right up there in those conversations.
Fantastic. And to finish off, same question to every one of you. What makes Manchester global?
I think sport has to be at the top of that list. We are so known globally, but I think our profile is becoming much more known beyond football and for culture and creativity. We're now getting quoted in Bloomberg, and Joe can talk a bit more about this, but I think what makes us global is our appeal as an exciting destination that people want to visit. Ultimately, people are getting a bit of FOMO if they've not been here, and I think that's what makes us global. That's what puts us on a list of everyone's talking about Manchester, I want to go. It's that international FOMO.
That's actually, I'm going to jump in here because I think that's those 2 articles that came out from the BBC and Bloomberg.
Bloomberg one was great.
Yeah. I think the Bloomberg headline was something along the lines of, is Manchester the answer to the UK's economic renewal? Which in terms of like a global headline is exactly what we want to say. As you say, our press team could have written that for them. And what was interesting is that article kind of picked through the conversation we've had here, like the Manchester resurgence in the 90s, but what's going on now in terms of like the commercial investment, that's what's happening in the city. And it drew out graduate retention, and it also pointed to the underlying economics of it, the productivity, the economic growth statistics. It's not just us shouting about it, the data backs it up. It's not just us shouting about it, is the BBC economics editor, it's Bloomberg News putting us up in lights.
It's not just Mancunian swagger. They've looked at the data as well.
And Tom?
In the idea of like French winemaking, bear with me, there's the idea of terroir. That a wine is unique to where it's produced because it's the topography, it's the weather, it's the soil. You can't recreate it. It is absolutely from that place. And I think every city creates its own culture. It kind of grows up. It's the people, it's the vibe, it's everything that makes that kind of city unique. And lots of cities do that. And Manchester has its own character. I don't agree with people who say Manchester's lost its character or become anonymous. I think that's ridiculous. It might not be like the Manchester of their memory, but it still, every time I come home, feels like Manchester to me. But what's important is that you create that culture, that unique kind of essence of a city. Can you take it to the world, and is the world interested? And to me, that's what makes the city global. We've created a great city, but then what's made it global is that a team of people and lots of stakeholders and people involved have taken that story, that kind of essence, to the world, and the world has gone. That's actually really cool. And people have visited, and people have moved here, and businesses have moved here. And it goes back to that idea a bit like with Soho House. It's that connectivity of what's grown from the ground up here and what is attracted here, and blending those two together. To me, that's what makes Manchester a global city.
That's good points.
Well, I had longer to think, so I cheated really.
I think that question of why anyone should care is a really important one for us. So, millions of people have something to care about if they're watching a Manchester football team on the TV, right? And that's beamed across the globe, whether you're watching it in the US or China. And we're giving the world more reasons to care about what's happening in this city. And I think that's quite exciting because they care, because actually they came to see an Eagles gig, but they stayed and they got a feel for the city as well. So the more we give people reasons to care about what's happening here in Manchester. I think the other thing is, I'd say, like, Manchester has always been global. People maybe cared about the city for sport at one point of time. Maybe during the 80s and 90s, we lost our way economically, so people cared because of the music. But now we're at a point where people care about the city for all of these factors, whether it be sport, whether it be culture, whether it be music, whether it be the commercial things that the cities bring into the world. And I think that's a real sweet spot for us.
I guess I can only really come of it from the 5 years that I've been here. But I think and I'm an adopted Manc now, so I can say that.
Where did you used to live?
So I'm from Devon originally, but I did move up from London. I was in London for about 14 years. So when I came up here, and it was off the back of COVID, the warmth, the kindness and the pride that I saw of the people that I interacted with, I think was what sets Manchester apart from any other city. People really want to see businesses, people succeed. I mean, our premium member community, over 50% of them have come from referrals. So people were seeing what we were doing and they wanted to tell other people. So we've sort of continued that community aspect to the venue now that it's open. But just going back to the venue piece and sort of international, Manchester used to be a top 5 destination for ticket sales globally, and it slipped because other cities, London, Madrid, New York, opening up new venues and doing more things. So we want to take it back into that top 5 destination. I think having the infrastructure here to attract those big events is really doing that. So
what number are we now?
Don't know this year. I don't know. I think we're about 8 or something like that. So we're getting back there, but
Got to fix that.
we've got to fix that.
I'm sure you will. We are lucky, I think, to be working and living in this city, and I certainly wouldn't want to be doing business in anywhere else. So on that note, I'd like to thank you all for today. It was really, really interesting, and I'm absolutely buzzing, actually.
Brilliant, thanks.